Hi, I'm Chris, a Microsoft 365 consultant here at Incentra. Today we're just looking at one of the possible uses for AI to help you with your everyday work, and to kind of bear in mind where things may be headed and what things might look like in the future when this gets combined in with common desktop programs such as Excel and Word and the such. So at the moment I've got a demo Excel document here with some information. So as part of my job, a lot of it is analysing data from tenants and trying to collate all that information so we can best recommend solutions, migrations, health checks, etc., etc. So at the moment I've just got some data pulled in from my development tenant, essentially, just for demonstration purposes. So we are comparing mailboxes from my tenant, and there's just some information that wasn't necessarily included in the initial discovery that we want to compare from some other scripts that have run, some other outputs. I'm by no means an Excel genius. I've definitely got used to using certain formulas and lookups over the last year or so as it becomes more and more part of my job. But we're just going to take... we're going to assume that I'm not quite sure how to compare this data at the moment, so we're going to use AI to help us to come to some of these conclusions. I've run through the whole sequence already. We're just going to go back and have a look at what it recommended, what I implemented, and how it helped, and how it could look different and be helpful in the future. So we have this information here. So we've got three separate outputs in three separate sheets, essentially. So we've got some mailbox data, we've got a list of users, which pulls all sorts of data down from Azure, and we've got some data size information around those mailboxes as well. So initially I wanted to make sure that the user ID is included. Say, for example, we've got a requirement that a user ID must be associated with a mailbox. So I had to ask AI basically, how can I go and get this information from the other worksheet? I knew how to do that, and I'm sure many people do, but I think it's a good example of where to start. So if I come over here to this window here, we've got ChatGPT open. So essentially I've been as precise as I can be, and I've said I need an Excel formula to take the contents of cell B2, because that is the actual cell we're talking about, and look it up from column A of a sheet called users. So first thing to kind of bear in mind is the more exact you are with the phrases that you use, the more exact the answers are going to be. So maybe the first time you use it, you'll be like, oh, how do I compare this cell? How do I look up this cell from somewhere else? And it will give you the answer. But to save yourself some time, you can be very precise with the questions that you ask, and it will be very precise with the answers that it gives. So we can see I've asked cell B2 and look it up from column A in a sheet called users. So B2 here is just my email address, and in users we're going to look it up from column A, which is the user principal name. So it's going to find a match here, and then I wanted it to return ID. So this is obviously column F here, and I've also said, and if it's found, return the contents of cell F from the sheet. So it's recommended that I use a VLOOKUP for this, and it's given me the formula to do it, and it's got the correct cells and sheet names already in there. So you can just copy that, and that is what I pasted right here, and it's done the job for me. Obviously, I'm not using this on live data. If this works, then I can. That's absolutely fine. Obviously, I wouldn't feed any of this data into ChatGPT, as it could be confidential, and it's going to store that in its memory. So then to go a step further, and it does give you a nice breakdown of the formula. This is something I really do like about some of the answers that ChatGPT gives you. It does try and explain it as well, and not just give you the code and say, there you go, that will do what it says it will do. And it doesn't always get it right. So for this one, I asked, require a similar formula, but I want to look up a different cell, essentially, and from a different sheet. So I need to look up the mailbox sizes from the data size sheet that I've got here. So I've just said, look at cell B2 again, so I'm using the email address, against column M in a sheet called data size, and that is where the data sizes are housed in there. So it, again, recommended a VLOOKUP, but for some reason I got an error this time, and I wasn't quite sure why. So I've just let it know this formula is returning an error, because it was just saying value. So there was something wrong in the formula that I could see, but I just wanted to see how it would handle me feeding back that it wasn't working. So it said, oh, okay, apologize for that. Here's a different approach. So it's now using an index and match combination. So it's given us all there again with the correct cells and sheet names. So I used that in here, and that is the formula that I used here. And as we can see, it worked absolutely fine. So in this instance, I was like, oh, okay. Because this wouldn't be typically the way that I would do that. So I said, can you do this by using an XLOOKUP? Because that's technically what I would usually use to do something like this, as I'm familiar with it. And it says, certainly you can, and it will give you the formula to do it using an XLOOKUP. And I was like, oh, okay, that looks very familiar. So I used that one in here. As we can see, I've put this side by side, and we get exactly the same results. So just to take that a little bit further, if you wanted to know why it's recommended a certain thing, so I've chosen just to ask, what's the difference between using an XLOOKUP and an index and match approach? And it's given me a very good response about how XLOOKUP is more simple, better readability, a bit more flexibility, but you get a bit more customization, and you get a wider use case if you're using the index and match system. I was like, oh, okay, that's very helpful to know. And then finally, I needed a formula to convert megabytes into gigabytes, and it just gave you this very simple little formula that I use every day. So then we can take a total of this, and then I want to know, if it was a lot more data, it could be 30 gigabytes. It's a bit easier to read for end users, clients, example. But yeah, I just wanted to give a quick overview of using AI to help solve some problems or help you along your way when you're doing your day-to-day work, and give good examples of how you could use it without breaking any data protection policies or anything like that. So it's worth considering how something like Microsoft Copilot being added into Excel could bring functions like this natively into the application, and how you could use it in your day-to-day to do something like this. Obviously something you can just Google and you'll get some results, but being able to tailor for it to output the exact formula that you need with the correct cells, the correct sheet titles and stuff like that could really save yourself some time if you're not familiar with it. And that's just one example of many things that you could do in your day-to-day work that could just help you along. So you could use it as an aid, not a replacement. It's not doing any of the work for you, but it's just saving you some time, so you don't have to trawl through all these forums and read articles on XLOOKUPs and Microsoft Excel formulas. It can really give you a nudge in the right direction. Obviously not trusting what it says completely, but we would test it in an environment such as this first, to make sure it does what it says it does and it's correct and you understand what it's doing. And then, yeah, it seems to have done everything I wanted to, so I'd say that's a win. Thank you.